Hi, and welcome to this Zoom webinar on Zoom webinars and meetings. I see we have a few people who've joined us already, and just it's kind of a get acquainted question. If you could put in the Q&A, we're looking for what state you're from, and if you'd share with us one of your favorite fall activities.
What are your favorite fall activities, Laura?
Well, I've already put mine in. Hiking. I love to hike. Arkansas is a great place for people who love the outdoors. And so hiking and camping, anything outside. Last weekend I did the Wild Cave tour here at one of our national parks, which is kind of outside, I guess. If you're in a cave, is it outside?
Great. So your Q&A is located in the upper left-hand corner of your computer screen. If you're on a mobile device, it's in the upper right-hand corner, and that's how we're going to be communicating, allowing our attendees to communicate with us, whether they have comments or questions today.
Okay. And sometimes you'll use the Q&A and sometimes you'll use the chat, and Mary will be talking to you about when to use which one. If you're hosting a webinar, she'll be talking to you a little bit about that later on.
So one of our South Carolina people says they're still waiting for fall.
Oh, yeah. Well, we're calling it fall here because when it got into the 90s and not close to 100, we started calling it fall. But it's been more in the 70s and 80s lately, which is really nice.
Okay.
All right. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us today, and we'd like to start by, we got to know you a little bit about where you're from and what you like to do, and now we'd like to kind of talk to you about some of your experience with webinars. That will give us an idea of kind of how to focus our presentation today. So we're going to put up a brief poll. And here are the poll questions, if you could just really quickly respond to these. Question 1 is this your first time to participate in a Zoom session? And that's yes or no. Question 2, have you ever presented a Zoom webinar? Question 3, how many Zoom sessions have you hosted or presented? And you'll see some ranking options in there from none, less than 5, 6 to 25, or more than 25. And finally, the last question, question number 4, is which online meeting platforms have you used? And so you can choose all of the ones that apply, any of these that you've used before. So Adobe Connect, I think we're pretty familiar with. So a lot of us have used that. Illuminate, GoToMeeting, Saba Webinar, Skype, WebEx, Zoom, and then other. And so if there are others that you've used that we don't have on our list that we may not be familiar with, if you can just go ahead and let us know in the Q&A what those other things are, that'd be great. So we'll just take a couple of minutes to respond to that.
Okay. Looks like we have about all our responses in.
Okay, so we can close the poll and look at the results of that.
So, is this your first time to participate? It looks like we have about 44% said no and about 56% that have said yes, so about half and half. Have you ever presented in a webinar? 33% said no, 67%. So many of you probably are already webinar presenter experts. How many Zoom sessions have you hosted or presented? Is that 6%? No, 67% said none, 11% less than 5, 22% 6 to 25, and more than 25, 0%. Okay?
Okay, so great. Mary's going to tell you everything you need to know to host or present a Zoom webinar today. You're in the right place.
We learn by doing. Let's look at the platforms people have used. A good percentage, 89%, Adobe Connect. Illuminate, what, 22%? GoToMeeting, 89%. Saba, 11%. Skype, 33%. WebEx, 56%. and Zoom 33%. So higher percentage on the other ones, but good representation. So do we have any in the Q&A box? Okay, great. Okay.
All right, so speaking of Q&A, we'd like for everyone who's on to find your Q&A located in the upper left-hand corner. If you'll click on that, that's where we'll be taking all of your questions and comments today. I am Dr. Laura Hendrix here with the University of Arkansas Systems Division of Agriculture, Cooperative Extension Service. I am part of this community of practice and I'm delighted to be involved in hosting this today. And joining me here from U of A Cooperative Extension Service are a couple of our other faculty and staff members. Dr. Julie Robinson is joining us from her office instead of here in our Zoom studio, and we wanted you to see what that's like to have a panelist in a remote location. So Julie is in our program and staff development unit, and she is my go-to tech person over there for instructional design and anything Zoom related. And she has helped, she's been using Zoom since 2013 and has helped with numerous Zoom sessions, including providing leadership to a summer series that's just recently been wrapping up. Julie, do you want to say hi?
Good morning, Laura, and hello to everyone joining us today. I'm excited to be participating in this webinar and get the opportunity to share with you what we've been doing here in Arkansas.
Okay, thanks, Julie. And then here in the Zoom studio with me, and when you hear me say Zoom studio, we do have a separate designated room for a Zoom studio where we have a backdrop and lighting and several cameras, and that is all under the direction of Mary Poling, who is coordinator for interactive communications. And Mary has been doing this for several years and has really run, planned, organized, helped conduct, evaluate, follow up hundreds of Zoom meetings and webinars and practice sessions. So she is our Zoom guru voice of experience here at UA Extension.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm always learning something new and love using this platform. So hope to share some ideas with you today.
Okay, and then we also are delighted to have supporting us today Mark Locklear, who is a web developer with North Carolina State University and also with E-Extension. Hi, Mark.
Hey, folks.
And then many of you know Elizabeth Kish, and Elizabeth is part of this community of practice and has been providing leadership to organizing these webinars. And also Elizabeth and Mark both are going to be what we call question wranglers today. So if you have questions on anything, E-Extension, Zoom, community of practice, feel free to put those in the Q&A, and we'll have Julie and Mark and Elizabeth all monitoring that and responding to your questions. So good morning, good afternoon, Elizabeth.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Laura. And on behalf of the Financial Security for All community, thanks to everyone who's participating today and who will later watch this as a recording. So I'm going to turn it over to Laura and Mary and Julie.
Okay, great. So one of the first things we want to know and talk about, Mary, is when to use a Zoom webinar and when to use a Zoom meeting and what the difference is. And
Right.
So I'll just let you take it away.
That's great. Well, as you probably realize, we're using the Zoom webinar platform today, and I'm going to cover a little bit about each of them, but a lot of details about how to use the bells and whistles. So we're in Arkansas. This is the shape of Arkansas. We've learned through, we are going to share some of our best practices, and basically we've learned through the trenches, from the trenches of what we've learned since, actually we've been using Zoom since 2012 when it first rolled out, and Zoom webinars since 2014 when it first rolled out. And we're happy that it's being hosted today by E-Extension and the Financial Security for All communities. So I'm going to say something just to start with is you don't need a studio. You don't need, you can Zoom from anywhere, and that's one of the reasons we like Zoom. It's easy to connect. Our counties with low bandwidth have been able to connect fairly easily with this platform. That's why we've used it. And I learned to use it just in my previous position where I was helping people do web-based reporting, and I was always so frustrated that I could not see their screen, I could not see them or share with them how to do that. And you're talking on the phone, here, are you here? No, I'm up here. You can't figure out where they are. So I like the ability and the how robust Zoom platform is to allow us to do many different things with Zoom, or with online meeting. So let's look at some differences first and what they're about. A Zoom meeting is where you can have two-way audio and video. Anybody who's on can be seen and heard if they have a webcam and a microphone. At the bare minimum, you can have up to 50 people in one Zoom meeting. Anybody can share their screen that's in that Zoom meeting, and anybody can be assigned recording and record. So the pictures you see here is in a Zoom meeting with speaker view, where this is set up as speaker view, where this person was speaking in the meeting and these were the participants, and the film strip went over into the right-hand side. In gallery view, you would see everybody, and it's controlled by each person's screen. So that's just kind of a basic overview of Zoom meetings. Now, Zoom webinar, here's some screenshots actually from yesterday's Tech Tuesday webinar. Panelists, today, Laura, Julie, Elizabeth, and Mark are all panelists, and that's the terminology in Zoom webinar. And so what we saw when Laura was first introducing you, the panelists we see each other's video feed. We also, when we share screen, we can still see each other's video feed. So in Zoom webinar, it's one-way audio and video out to the attendees, and you can have up to 50 panelists in one webinar. And that's a lot of panelists to coordinate. So what does the attendee view? Well, you already know what the attendee view looks like. When Laura was talking, this is what you saw. You saw one. The panelists all saw each other. And when we share screen like we're doing now, you're just seeing the video feed of whichever panelist is talking. So right now, you are seeing me on the video feed in your upper right-hand corner. You can grab that video, I call it the film strip. You can close it. There's an icon at the top. You can move it around, especially if there's something that we're showing in our screen share that's in the way. So in Zoom webinar, attendees have the ability to communicate through the Q&A or the chat. We choose to disable the chat for attendees and funnel all comments and questions through the Q&A. And I'm going to show you how those look so that you would see what it is like from a panelist standpoint in a little bit. Today we have the ability, we use the chat to communicate with each other non-verbally. Now I can't do that when I'm presenting, so Laura and Julie and Mark and Elizabeth can communicate with each other non-verbally through the chat. They can also chat out something to you all as the intent to everyone, and that we'll do later on. So how to decide which one you should use? It just depends, and it depends on Zoom webinar creates a more controlled environment for recording and repurposing, where Zoom meetings, you have to make sure if it's a one-on-one meeting, it's not any big deal. 1-on-2, 10 people. Once you get more than 10 people in a Zoom meeting, you really need somebody who all they do is monitor the mics, be able to cut people's mics if they don't realize it's on and somebody comes in and they start talking and somebody else is talking. So it just depends on what you want to do. Personally, I love Zoom meeting. I like Zoom webinar, but I would like to be able to see all of you today just as well as I'm seeing my fellow panelists. So there's trade-offs. You just have to decide which is best. And my understanding is that through e-extension, we're using their Zoom webinar today, and that I think, and Mark can maybe chat this out, that there is a Zoom meeting license also available, but I'm not sure for communities of practice how that works. All right, let's look at some of the roles and terms, and you're going to hear them interchangeably. So we saw what the attendee looks like. These are participants in a Zoom meeting that were in all one room. They were projecting the meeting up on a screen, and they were following what this presenter, who happened to be in the Zoom studio, it was for our best care training, was showing them and engaging them in. So in Zoom meeting, the participants are called participants, and actually the host The person hosting the meeting is the host, the person who schedules it, and then presenters, we just use that term interchangeably. They're presenting in the meeting. In Zoom webinar, the presenter is a panelist. I call the panelist. That's just, here was one when we had a lunch and learn series, evaluation series, and actually Rich was the panelist on that. We use the word host, the on-camera host, interchangeably with both Zoom webinar and Zoom meetings. Yesterday, Laura's department, the Family and Consumer Sciences department here, hosts a monthly, they call it FCS Zoom In, Zoom Out, where it's a connection with all the agents in our state, the FCS agents, once a month to have a program, 20-minute presentation. Yesterday it was one of our food scientists on campus sharing some research, kind of an educational piece. And so she was the on-camera host. Today she's our on-camera host in Zoom webinar. So it's good that you're not, the next one is the technical host, and that's what Mark's doing today. It's hard for the technical host to always be the on-camera host, because as you can see, the technical host, and this is from one of our sessions, you know, the facilitator, I call it the technical host, both for the Zoom meeting and Zoom webinar, has to manage and juggle many things. So this is a screenshot of one of the meetings I was the technical host, kind of watching people's microphones, watching the chat, watching the Q&A, that sort of thing. And the last but not least are the text wranglers. This particular picture shows a very large virtual field tour that we did where we had many text wranglers, because we had about 200 schools, I don't remember the numbers, but a lot of people sending questions in that didn't always get presented live because we had a limited time. So today, kind of the text wranglers are Elizabeth and Mark, and then Julie during the presentation part of it. So those are some of the roles and terms. What are best practices? As a participant or an attendee, arrive, join 15 minutes early so everything works. Check your audio and visual. Silence those phones. Everybody got their phones on silence. They're a distraction, but also if your microphone's on, they're a real distraction. We put signs on our door. Here's the latest sign. And Zoom, like many other web applications, works best if you close all the other things that you don't need, like your email that might take up bandwidth. That sort of thing, and print some handouts. These are all best practices for meeting participants or webinar attendees. There were no handouts today, by the way. Okay, what are some of the best practices for panelists? 30 to 60 minutes early. If you're the host, sometimes 90 minutes early. It depends. Some of the same things, sign on the door. Wired connection. If I can be wired and hardwired into the internet, that's what I want to do and shut my Wi-Fi off because it's stronger. But if your Wi-Fi is stronger, you would do it that way. But usually best practice is to stay wired. Always check your audio and video beforehand. If you're going to be sharing your screen, you want to have those applications that you're going to share. If it's a PowerPoint, if it's a website or a form, you want to have them open and minimized so it's easily accessible to get to them. And I'll show you about that a little bit later. You want to shut off those notifications on your computer because when you share your screen and you share your desktop, guess what? They pop right up there. So Laura might be sending me an email that's going to pop up there that you don't need to be distracted by, neither do I. And last but not least, here's a picture of Julie having something to drink during your presentation, a glass of water, a cup of water or something, a bottle of water, just because you never know when you're going to get choked up. All right. Recycle your paper bag, and you're like, what does this have to do with the Zoom webinar? Well, as my coworkers have heard me say, it's like, would you be walking into your department meeting, sitting down with a paper bag overhead in a face-to-face meeting? Or would you be standing in a presentation, a live presentation in an auditorium with people in the auditorium and throw a paper bag over your head? Check out the reaction of Julie's coworker when she had a paper bag over her head in a staff meeting. So the point is this. So if you wouldn't put a paper bag over your head in a live face-to-face meeting, why would you not turn your camera on in an online meeting? It's so important that people, if you're in a Zoom meeting, that they can connect with you virtually, virtual eye connection, to be able to see and to see body reaction, nonverbal cues. But also it says, you know, you're important. So it's not about you. Most people just hate to be on camera. I don't particularly love it, but you know, some days I'm thinking, but it's so important. It's not about me, it's about you, connecting with you. So recycle those paper bags and turn on that camera. So there's a lot of different cameras, and I'm not talking about equipment today. If you want to ask questions about equipment, go ahead and ask them. Or if you want to Zoom with me, I'd love to Zoom with you and talk about some of the equipment that we like. But there's so many things out on the market today that are easy to connect to and not that expensive. Here's an example of a webcam that's on a little tripod, and it's actually quite good. You'll see some pictures of the results of that in a little bit. So that's kind of a camera. This is the camera that we use in the studio, and actually this is my old office in the other building where we just rigged up so it looked like, you see those reams of paper? Reams of paper are wonderful devices to get that computer up so it looks like you're looking at eye level. In our studio here, it's really just a double office. My desk is right over there. But so we have the camera, and this came from our communications people early on, smack dab in the middle of our screen. So I'm looking straight at the camera, and you may be in the meeting over here, but you have to look right there so it looks like I'm looking at you, not like looking over here, looking over there. It's important for people to be able to see you straight on camera. Lighting is important, and you don't have to spend a lot of money on lights. You'll see some lights that Julie's using today. We're fortunate enough that we have some more professional lights that we didn't have them at first. At first, we were using we were stealing from offices. What kind of lights can we get in on? This is the early days of the studio, and you can see from the angle of looking at them. We're just using a fluorescent here. Didn't have a matching one. Had another one over here. So lighting is important, and you'll see some pictures in a little bit that you'll get to react to. Light just lights, lights people up. TMI, way too much information. Okay, Zoom, you can join anywhere, but do you really need to know that you're not in an office, or do you really need to know that, hey, this is my bedroom? I don't think so. So background is really important. So, okay, here's a nice picture of Julie from Virtual Summer School. She was in a remote location. She was traveling. So here's the behind the scenes. So what a little duct tape and an ironing board and 2 suitcase handles could do to get her to look like this instead of this. This was day 1. This was about day 4. So that's why you see difference in dresses. So the point is this: be cognizant of your background. You don't have to have a backdrop. We kind of like our coaches panel. It's kind of advertising, but it also cleans everything up. But there's, as is in Julie's situation today, you can see she's in an office. So, okay, open your Q&A. This is your chance to put some things in. Tell us, what could these ladies do differently in their setups to make their look different? So if you would open your Q&A and let us know, what are some things that you see about these pictures that could make it a little bit better, to make it a little bit more engaging? And yeah. So Julie, Laura, are we seeing anybody putting anything in the Q&A? Do you know where your Q&A box is? On your computer, it's in the upper left-hand corner, and on your mobile device, it's in your upper right-hand corner. So, okay, so I went up to Laura's office. Okay, we see some things.
Yes, so one person responded that they need to lower the camera angle to avoid the ceiling being the major focus, work on their background, change the angle of the camera, fix the height of the camera, not be on the phone, look directly at the camera.
Very good. All very good observations. Lighting. So let's look at, thank you all for entering those and dialoguing with us about that. So let's look at this. This is Julie's setup today. This, we took a picture yesterday, but she's got lights behind her and she's got lights coming in at her. It's her office, okay? So that helps create the look that you see with her today. Laura, this is in her office, and on the previous one, we saw quite a mess that she had behind her. She cleaned up the mess, she turned on her lights, she put on a jacket to add a little bit more color around her face, and then she put some more, like, I call it subliminal advertising. 4-H is a part, she's got the 4-H clover, and she teaches about family economics and consumer resources, so with the little piggy banks here and here give an opportunity to share some things. So take notice of your background, take notice of how you set up when you're going to be on camera, whether it be for a Zoom meeting or a Zoom webinar panelist. Now, of course, today, if you're an attendee, we can't see you, so unless you know you're going to be promoted to a panelist, then it's okay. All right, so if you've never been a Zoom webinar panelist, you might wonder, it's a little different how you get in as a panelist. And so the next slide I'm going to show you is really a little video with I'm going to talk through it, of how you join as a panelist. So the other thing, by using a video, the nice thing about Zoom, when you share your screen, you can share a video with sound. If you were on early, you saw sound, but also to demonstrate something. And so we've embedded it into the PowerPoint. So when you're going to be a panelist, whoever's hosting the webinar is going to enter you as a panelist, and you're going to receive an email. So watch, and I'll talk you through what happens on this next part. So you get an email, and it'll tell what it is, and it'll come from noreply@zoom.us. It'll have your name on it. It'll have the date and the time, and then there's going to be a link, and you need to click that link to join. And so it'll pop up a browser, and it'll launch the application. It'll download the application to your desktop, and it'll connect. Okay. And so the first thing, it may not be joined to computer audio. And so that green button says join computer audio. You wouldn't be able to hear if you didn't have it joined by audio. That little symbol in the lower left also shows that. You might want to just go ahead and check it so the next time it's already there. So now I'm in computer audio, and I'm able to use that arrow in the lower left corner to see which microphone and speaker that I am connected to in this Zoom meeting. I'm muted because you can see my microphone's muted. I'll go to audio options, and I will test my computer mic and speaker. Hit test speaker. You can move the volume bar across. When you hit it, you should be able to hear it. If not, you need to hit the drop down and choose the correct speaker. If you need, and then you need to test your microphone. Which microphone is it choosing? Run a test 1, 2, 3, and then it'll play back. And if you can hear yourself, you know everybody else should be able to hear you. Now, you're not going to be able to see the video go on because I was using an application that wouldn't allow the video to come on while I was doing this. So go in the upper right-hand corner then and go full screen with that little dot. And I can change from speaker view to gallery view. Gallery view is, I call it Hollywood Squares, where you see everybody side by side. So that's how you would join a Zoom webinar as a panelist. And the best practices of always come in, mute your microphone, and then check your audio and video and microphone and see how it works. So let's look at the Zoom taskbar. And this is for Zoom meetings and task toolbar, I should say. And it's always located at the bottom of your screen. And the Zoom meeting and Zoom webinar looks the same, except Zoom webinar has Q&A. So the first thing I'm giving you a little orientation here. So if you click on participants, it'll pop up a window, and this is an example of Zoom webinar, and it shows which panelists are in. If it was Zoom meeting, it would just say participants. It would not have viewers. But in Zoom webinar, you can check to see, if you hit that, it'll come over here and it'll tell which viewers are in. So you can see how that works. The next is the Q&A. So down on the taskbar, and this is Zoom webinar only, is when you have Q&A. So when the panelists, all panelists can see the Q&A. When they click Q&A, a pop-up comes up and it opens and it says who, or it says anonymous if you send it anonymously. How do you, and the question. So you have a choice of answering it live or answer by text. If you hit answer live, it will show all the other panelists, and all the attendees now can see who asked the question, what the question was, and that it's going to be answered live. So if you've asked a question today that somebody has marked it answer live, that means they're going to give it to us or whoever to answer it live later on. Okay? When you mark done, it moves that answered question over to the answered tab. Okay, so what happens when you answer by text? Let's look at that. So here's a Q&A, and this is Zoom webinar only. So if you hit answer by text, it pops over into here that you have a text box that you can enter the answer in. You can send that privately. If you do that, send privately, none of the other attendees are going to see that question or see that answer. So you have to make a decision. If you have sensitive stuff, you may, and you're a text wrangler, you may want to send it privately. Okay, and then you can hit send. All right, let's look at share screen. Now, share screen is a tool that you can use in both Zoom meeting and Zoom webinar. And this is what makes it so rich and robust to be able to use. So when you click at the bottom of the middle of your Zoom screen, you hit share screen, a pop-up comes up. And what it'll say is select a window or an application that you want to share. It will always default to your desktop. Now, I have two desktops. I have two screens. So it defaults to my main one. But I could choose to share a whiteboard, I could choose to share a mobile device, another camera, or I could choose just one specific application that I have open, like the PowerPoint. If you're going to share sound, either through a video or music, you have to check share computer sound before you hit share screen. So in this case, I'm going to click I'll select this open PowerPoint. It's in presentation mode. And then I'm the one sharing the screen. My toolbar moves to the top of my Zoom screen. And then all the video feed moves over here. So if I move with my mouse up to the top, the toolbar moves down. And then I, as the presenter, can see the toolbar. There's my mute. I can unmute. I was muted at that point. I can do all the things that I need to do right up here. Okay, so the next shot I'm going to share is what more and annotate looks like. So here's another, just another screenshot of the toolbar that's at the top of my shared screen. And if I click more, these are the other tools that I can reach or get to when I'm sharing my screen. If I click annotate, the annotation bar drops down, and for the most part, nobody else can see that but me, and then I can choose how I want to annotate. And if I hit draw, these are drawing tools. Let me tell you that my favorite ones are the spotlight, and under the spotlight is an arrow, because then I can get my mouse back and still have my arrow. So let me demonstrate that. You can't see me doing this. You could probably see my mouse moving around. But here's my arrow. So it says Laura, Hendrix, and Mary Pulling underneath it. So I can move that arrow around, but I cannot go any further on this PowerPoint until I get my mouse back. Okay? So point is this. You need to practice what you do and practice with yourself before you do it. Well, I'm going to close the annotation because I don't really want to use it anymore. And so I'm going to move forward here. So I'm back down to the bottom taskbar of the bottom of your Zoom screen, the chat. So the chat is available in both Zoom meeting and Zoom webinar. It's the way to communicate non-verbally and to manage a large group. So when you hit chat, it comes up into your chat, and you have the ability to hit the drop down, and you can either chat, and this is a Zoom webinar one, to everyone or to all panelists or to whoever, to individual panelists. Now in a Zoom meeting, you can chat to anyone who's in the meeting. Today, when in Zoom webinar, if you hit chat, again, it's disabled because we're using the Q&A as a way to go through. So that's the chat feature. Good way to manage a large group, like yesterday in that Zoom meeting we had over 50 participants in it. And when Laura wasn't on camera, she was monitoring the chat, and so was I over on another computer, and it was a good way to manage a lot of people in a meeting. Okay, I'm going to move from the toolbars to just briefly, and this is probably not news to any of you, but this is kind of how we approach things in planning for our webinars and our meetings, or our Zoom meetings. So, got to come up with an agenda, especially when you have more than one person. What are the team member roles? Who's going to do what? We did this early on. We always talk about compelling content, and Julie's going to talk about that here in a second. Because if you don't have compelling content, people are not going to stay with you. It's easy to be distracted. What kind of engagement can you create? And are you going to have any handouts? So I'm going to turn microphone over to Julie and let her go through the compelling content.
Thank you, Mary. So one of the opportunities that I get is to work with a lot of our presenters on their content, and our goal is always to create compelling content. Now, no matter what sort of presentation we're giving, whether it's a webinar or face-to-face, we always want our content to be compelling. But in a webinar, you have to approach it a little bit differently, because users or participants could be doing all kinds of other activities, checking email, checking their phone. Sometimes they do that in face-to-face sessions as well. But definitely with a webinar, you want to up your game on your compelling content. And many of the ways that I encourage our presenters to do that is incorporating a lot more graphics into their presentations, and using less text, or using text that is a little bit more bold. Other options that they've got are maybe graphically displaying a process. So maybe if it's cyclical or linear, but using images to display some sort of process. Now, the other cool thing that you can do with Zoom, at least, and I know you can do it with other video conferencing platforms, is sharing your mobile device. So a lot of times for our presentations that we do, we ask specialists or some of our communications folks to come in and share what are the latest apps that they're using on their phone or their tablet. And so instead of doing a bunch of screenshots, with Zoom, they can actually share their mobile device and walk them through either that social media or that app. And so it makes it a little bit more comprehensible for our folks, and they actually get to see it in real life. Another thing that I encourage our presenters to do is, if they're going to demonstrate a new technology like Facebook Live, then actually incorporate that into the webinar. So today we had what we call a soft opener, and one of our presenters was presenting on Facebook Live, and so he actually used Facebook Live as he walked across the parking lot into the Zoom studio, and so that was a great way to demonstrate the social media that he was about to present on in real time. And then, so all of that kind of focuses on either your PowerPoint or your screen. Another thing that you can do is actually in the studio, we had a picture of one of our presenters showing how you could, she was presenting on stress management, and she was actually showing how you could do some deep breathing exercises. And so that's always fun to do as well. And another option that we have with Zoom is you can share your screen. And so actually, so that it could be content appropriate for this community of practice, we are actually going to walk you through how you can show participants how to complete a couple of tasks actually on the web. And so instead of, they're again doing a bunch of screenshots, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but you do have the opportunity to show them there again in real time how to navigate a particular website. And so I'm going to turn it over to Laura, and she is going to narrate this as I share my screen and show you guys how to use this consumer finance website. So Laura?
Okay, thanks, Julie. Yes, Julie and Mary asked me to come up with some examples of things that we could do that might be interactive, that would be representative of things we would use with our community of practice. So one thing we thought would be fun to look at, I used this recently in a college saving and spending webinar that we did with the folks here from Arkansas 529. We looked at comparing college costs. So I know there are other ones, but we used this one on Consumer Financial Protection Bureau's website. So if you go to that website and then under Consumer Tools and Paying for College, click on that. Then we'll scroll down and look at Compare Costs. Is a blue button in the middle of the screen. Click on that. And this actually allows us to compare costs at 3 different institutions of higher education. So click on Get Started. And we can type in a school name or search for school names. And looks like Julie's going to University of Arkansas. We have several campuses. Fayetteville is our land-grant campus, home of the Razorbacks, up in the corner of our state. We're looking at the bachelor's degree for a 4-year program there. Continue. We're saying we're in school, resident of this state, so it'll be in-state tuition and living on campus. So there's our cost estimate for that. We're going to compare 3, so we're adding another school. Hendrix. Hendrix is a private college here. Love the name of the school. When my uncles are in town, they like to go by Hendrix College Paraphernalia because it has our name on it. So Hendrix College, and then one more. University of Tennessee, Knoxville. Are we doing in-state or out-of-state tuition on this one, Julie? I live in a different state, so we're paying out-of-state tuition to go to University of Tennessee in Knoxville. So you can see the cost comparison for the student in Fayetteville is going to be $23,500, a little over a year. For the private college, Hendrix, $56,214. And then for University of Tennessee, Knoxville, with the out-of-state tuition, $48,046, and that's without student aid. Thanks, Julie.
All right. So another example that you can share with participants is how to actually fill out an online form. And so Laura is going to walk us through how to fill out the Pledge for America Saves.
So this is one of our web pages at uaex.edu/money. And on the left-hand menu, there's an America Saves tab. So Julie, click on America Saves. And there's the online form, and so anyone can contact America or any of our extension services in different states. You can contact America Saves and actually have this embedded in your website. So Julie is saving for clothing and shoes, $100 a month. So it's something that's important to Julie, and she puts in her email address. And her zip code there. How did you hear about America Saves? At work, yes. And she's almost ready to submit her pledge. And for those of you who've done this before, I do the text messages. It's kind of the right amount of text messages, so I've kind of liked that. Not too many. And there we go. There's Julie has officially is now an American Saver. Congratulations, Julie.
Thank you, Laura.
You're welcome.
So there again, we were using our screen, and I mentioned earlier actually going beyond your screen and thinking about the space around you. So what are some ways that you can actually do some actual hands-on there in the studio and demonstrate? And so Laura is going to show us how we can do something that might be considered old school. While Zoom has what they call a whiteboard, it's not exactly ideal unless you've got a stylus that you can actually be a little bit more detailed in what you're writing. And especially with this group, I think you like to demonstrate certain equations and how you factor and figure certain amounts. And so Laura's going to demonstrate how she's using the space around her and props within the studio to show you how to calculate a formula. So Laura?
Okay, now I know that we can throw a spreadsheet up and screen share that, but I kind of like the engagement and the interaction where you can see the presenter and also where I can talk about what I'm doing as I'm putting it up. So the example I'm using today, my oldest son Sloan is 24 and he is married to Abby for 2 years, Sloan and Abby. So we're going to look at a liquidity ratio for Sloan and Abby, and that's just to see if they have enough in liquid assets to meet kind of the recommended requirement for what they would need to be financially stable. So Sloan and Abby have $10,000 in their savings account, and they have $1,700 in their checking account. So that's $11,700 that they currently have in liquid assets. Now we also need to know for this formula what their monthly expenses are. So every month, just to meet their needs, they spend $2,670. So we divide that. So somebody divide that out for me real quick. And what is the answer? Thank you, Mary. So that was really fast. Mary is so smart. So that's 4.38% down here, or 4.38. And we know that they can live on that for 4 3/8 months. So what we're looking for down here is that they can survive. We recommend at least 3 months if they both lost their jobs, but they can survive a little over 4 months. So Sloan and Abby are doing okay on their liquidity ratio.
All right, thank you, Laura. So that's just another example of how you can go beyond your PowerPoint and go beyond your screen and actually do some hands-on demonstrations in your webinar. And so we've also got some examples here where we have used props in our studio, and you can see at the top we've got actually a honey tasting with our bee specialist, and then down in the lower left hand corner we've got the lovely Ashley getting everyone excited for the upcoming webinar in the pre-session section of her webinar that she presented. And then we've also got Lavana is showing us props and examples of safety wear for spending a lot of time out in the sun. So as you can imagine, anywhere in the country, but especially in Arkansas in the summertime, it's very hot, very intense sun rays, and so she was demonstrating proper attire to wear for optimum skin safety and health safety during those summer months with her hat and her sunglasses, and she did a really great job of using a lot of props. So there again, just some examples and some ways that you can make your content compelling and also make your presentation engaging. And so now what we would like for you to do is open up your Q&A box, or box, and let us know what keeps you engaged and also what keeps you or what causes you to disengage as a participant. And then maybe you've got some input from a presenter's side, is what keeps your participants engaged? What's your experience? What have you found that keeps participants engaged? And then also, what have you observed that causes them to maybe disengage from webinars or online presentations that you have given? So just go ahead and open up your Q&A box and let us know. So Mary and Laura, what are a couple of things that cause you to, or that keeps you engaged in webinars?
Well, as I told you at the beginning, if I can see people, it keeps me engaged, and if I see action.
Okay. So go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I don't know if you're monitoring too, but we have engagement. Someone said best for me are polls or opportunities to make application and put a response about a topic.
Yes, absolutely. We definitely like to use polls in our and question and answer throughout to kind of give those opportunities for not only knowledge checks, but just to kind of throw a kind of a change of pace out there, and that kind of helps keep participants engaged too.
We have someone who said participant Q&A with facilitator debriefing and for engagement. And something that I agree so much, for disengaged speakers who read the bullet points on their slides.
Yes. Those are all great responses. And one of those responses is perfect for leading into the next point that Mary is going to cover, is if you don't want to be that presenter that causes your participants to disengage by just reading your bullet points, that means that you might have to practice your presentation a little bit ahead of time.
Yeah, we spend most of our, not most of our time, a lot of our time practicing, and it doesn't take much to practice. So when we were practicing for the whiteboard, we tried it two ways. One through the screen share and the whiteboard with Julie down here, but we realized you really need a stylus on your computer, and we didn't have that. And when we practiced with Laura originally, she had a marker that wasn't working very well. So practicing helps do that. A lot of times, if you're doing it in a setting like this setting where we had one of our conference rooms, we needed to practice with the equipment. And then this is just showing, this is another view in our studio that you can see practicing right before you get started, because to see if something is going to work. And what's the time on this? The clock really helps. All right, so we're near the end here, but really, you want to share this desktop? I don't think so. So my big thing, my big kick, and when we were meeting with her to talk about different things, this is my latest brand your desktop. And whether you're doing a live presentation where people can see you're up on a screen in a room, or if you're going to share your desktop, brand it. So I like to use PowerPoint. I clean up my desk and create a JPEG or a PNG folder about what I want to share. So today's desktop, this is a picture of what we're using. We see this desktop folder. You're like, I got to have all that stuff on the desktop. Slide it into a folder, and then you can remove it when you're done. But I just want to, these are some images flying in here of different Zoom meetings, webinars that we've had that I've taken and branded the desktop with the brand logo in case I share my desktop, and I'm just reinforcing what I'm doing. All right, so Julie's going to chat out to you some resources and a Qualtrics link. We would love to have your feedback on today. And she's going to send that through the chat. You should be able to click on it or copy and paste it into your web browser. And if you click on that Qualtrics link, you can do it after we finish. You can do it during this last part of time. We're about to take some questions. She's also going to send you a link to the Zoom Support Center. I have found, and I think Mark probably would say this too, you know, if you got a lot of questions on, well, how do you do this in Zoom? I don't create a lot of help guides because I just send my people to the Zoom Support Center, and I guide them specifically to where to go. But it is a good help and a resource to you as you're working on Zoom. And the other thing is this on the practice thing. If you don't have a Zoom account, you can get a free Zoom account and just practice. Or if you do, if your agency, your organization has a Zoom account and you're going to be doing a Zoom webinar for this community of practice, you can just use Zoom Meeting to do your practices with yourself and with others. So while you're looking at those resources and that link, I just want to share with you our contact information. We welcome you to contact us if you have questions, and if you have questions now that you want to go ahead and put in the Q&A box that we can take live. We have a few more minutes here. This is our contact information. We hope today that we have modeled some practices that might work for you in future Zoom meetings or Zoom webinars. And we're always open to new ideas and thoughts and suggestions, and we're always learning something new every day. So I'm going to stop sharing and see what questions that we might have for any of our people. And if you have questions, go ahead and put them in the Q&A. Are we done?
One person would like to know, do we like Adobe, which do you like better, Adobe Connect, if you don't have Zoom? Or would you like Adobe Connect, would that be your alternative, I guess, if you didn't have Zoom?
I can't answer that because I've only been an attendee in an Adobe Connect, and so I personally, but I'm going to invite Julie or Mark if you have any opinion on that. Or
I'll just share not necessarily my experience, but what I've heard from other folks. So E-Extension just sort of moved all of our communities of practice that were being hosted by Iowa State and the Adobe Connect system there. We've sort of migrated those folks over to Zoom in the last 8 months, and so I can say I've only heard positive things from people who are coming over from Adobe Connect to Zoom. Now there are some growing pains there. You mentioned the brown bag analogy was a great one, but at Adobe Connect, at least the way they use it at Iowa State, there wasn't any video for presenters. So there was, I got some pushback from folks, but after having been on the webinar as a panelist with live video and watching the recording after the fact, almost all of those folks agree that it makes for a more robust webinar if you can see video. And so just in general, from what I've heard from folks who came over from Adobe Connect and are using now Zoom now, I've only heard positive things.
And to piggyback on that, someone else asked what is in Adobe Connect that you don't have in Zoom, and there's not really anything that one has necessarily over the other than the video. Adobe Connect is a bit more cumbersome, so if we were to use that here in Arkansas, especially with some of our more rural counties, they would not be able to really participate as much as they are with Zoom because they wouldn't be able to turn their camera on. So we wouldn't be able to see their bright, shining, smiling faces. But Adobe Connect, basically, most of your platforms are going to have the same basic functions. It's just some of them are easier to navigate, and we find that Zoom is a little bit more user-friendly, both from a presenter side and a participant side. Another question is, can participants see the names of webinar participants or just the presenters?
In Zoom webinar currently, participants, or what we say attendees, can only see the names of the presenters, the panelists. My understanding from Zoom is that suggestion has been put forward so that I would imagine in the next update or so that we might see that that you should be able to see other attendees' names.
Yeah. And Mary, I was going to jump in there. That is one. That's probably the only thing I've heard that people miss from Adobe Connect is in the Adobe Connect environment, all attendees could see all the other attendees sort of in a chat, like by default. There's a chat box or sort of list of attendees there, and I agree with folks. It does the sense of community or sort of group. You feel like you're part of a group more. And as Mary mentioned, I think she submitted probably a request for that feature, and I've submitted a request for that feature too. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if we'll see that addition very soon.
Another question that came in: can you capture the list of attendees for class attendance purposes?
Oh yes, I love the reporting side of Zoom, whether it's a webinar or Zoom meeting. There are very robust reports that can be pulled. You don't need to take attendance while you're in there. They'll show what time the person entered, what time they left, and if they had to re-enter several times, especially with poor internet connection. Good question.
Another question that came in is about breakout rooms. Does Zoom have that capability, and what does that look like?
Zoom has that capability in Zoom meetings, and we are using that in our virtual office hours. Just really started using it. So the host of the meeting can break out into a number of different rooms and move people into those rooms. So for example, we have a couple people who support our website reworking, and so we'll have open office hours and people will come into the Zoom meeting and they have a question about this. So I'll break them out into one room with one of our panelists or presenters, and they'll take care of it, and then they can come back in, and I can do a variety of different rooms. So yeah, it's quite good. Okay, Laura.
Yes.
Anything?
Yes, I wanted to thank everyone again for joining us today. Thank you to Mary and Julie and Elizabeth and Mark. The regularly scheduled next webinar for this community of practice is October the 26th, and I've put that in the chat if you want to look at those details. Tara Straw is slated to be the presenter. She's the Senior Health Policy Analyst with Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, so she'll be talking about the premium tax credit and specifically about enrolling in those insurance policies provided by the Affordable Care Act. But I've also asked her to talk about any other hot topics that she's seeing coming down in health policy. Please do take a few minutes to respond to the Qualtrics survey. That link is just right there. I think it's just 3 or 4 questions. One of those is, would love to have your ideas for future topics for webinars for this community of practice. And any other closing remarks, Elizabeth or Mark? What else?
I'll put a link in chat if anyone has any questions about. So there's this survey link Julie just put in. So I'm going to put in a link for this web page will explain a little bit about the Zoom webinar benefit that eExtension offers our basic and premium members. So if you've got any questions about that, I'm going to drop my email in chat too, so you've got that. And so that's there. And so yeah, if anybody has any questions about Zoom, I'd love to chat more.
Okay.
So I would like to thank everyone, our colleagues from the University of Arkansas, Laura and Julie and Mary, and say that this is recorded, so we will be posting the recording as soon as we can.
Okay, and remember too that Mark is there with the extension and supporting us using Zoom technology through eExtension, and a great resource for us. Thank you, Mark. We appreciate you. And thank you, Elizabeth, for organizing these webinars for our community. Great. It looks like it's 12:30, so if there's nothing else.
So what we're going to do is we're going to mute our microphones and share our post-session with you. It's one slide, and here's some music. And we'll stay on to answer any questions by text that may occur to you for just a couple minutes. So have a great day, and I'm going to share my screen here shortly.